Okay, I'm going to give you a history, or Koba's history, and little bedtime story in this video on the Colt Walker 1847 revolver. Um, it's an interesting gun, an interesting piece of history. I always wanted one of these things because I'm going to give you a story about America, about inventors, and just getting really going off the charts, and that's what we ended up with, the Colt Walker. Thing about this pistol, and this is a repro, I believe I'll go over it once I get up to the Walker. It was the most powerful handgun manufactured in the United States, the largest and most powerful, from 1847 until 1935 when they developed the 357 Magnum. So this is unique and unusual gun. And also I'll get the specs and tell you where one of these in its original case, and I'll give you the numbers of how many were made, was also sold at the Rock Island Auction Company, and it was the most expensive or the largest amount of money spent on any one single handgun in history. So where the story all starts, and this is where it's complicated. Everybody go to Walker. You have to know about Sam Colt. Go on Wikipedia and find Samuel Colt and read about the man, okay? Because it's an interesting story how he developed a revolver, come up with an idea, how he went and patented it, and extended and held these patents from like the 1830s till the middle of the 1850s and had a monopoly on making revolvers, okay? And built a fortune in the famous company that we know today, Colt Firearms. And there's many American historic guns that were built and designed by this company long after Samuel Colt passed. So let's start with Sam Colt. His father was a very wealthy, I think he owned a textile factory or something. His father was well off. And when Sam Colt was a teenager, he tried doing some different businesses, and his father sent him to a very expensive boarding school. Now, at the boarding school, Sam Colt was also interested in explosives and pyrotechnics. So he was making some fireworks and demonstrating them to his fellow classmates, and somehow he went about and either damaged or burnt down the school. So he was promptly expelled, and when he came back to his father said, okay, and back in the 1820s, 1830s, when you screwed up, the best thing to do is his father went and signed him on board a ship that was leaving from New York till Calcutta, India, and probably taking the route going down around Africa up to India. So his old man put him on his ship, signed him on as a crew member, and off he was going to go for a few years. While on the ship is where he came up for the idea of a revolver, because most pistols, the only kind of revolving thing you had was like the pepper box, and if you guys are familiar, and I've handled original ones, they're heavy, bulky, like 31 caliber, and they had this big round barrel that was drilled out with 6 or 8 holes, and you could shoot it. That was the technology of the time. So supposedly when Colt was on his boat trip, or as a crew member, he said he seen the idea of a capstan and come up with the idea to make a revolving cylinder for a revolver with a single barrel, other than a multi-barreled huge piece of metal that revolves around the handle. And that is argued that he's seen something in a museum in England or something. But anyway, on this trip, and someone carved him a wooden model of his first pistol, something close to it. So being an educated man, he also knew about patents and patent rights. And for something, when you read it there, they told him to go get the patents filed in Europe, then file the patent for the revolver in America. Because if you did it the other way around, you couldn't get into the European market or something. It was a marketing strategy. Got his patents done. And so what he did is once he got his patents in Europe and his patent in the United States, okay, it's February 25th, 1836, in the United States, it was patented by Colt. And this is the Colt Patterson. And how it got the name is it was produced in a factory in Patterson, New Jersey. It was a 5-shot revolver, and originally the first ones were 28 caliber, and then with 36 caliber models showing up. And the first ones had no loading lever. And then I think there was different number 1, number 5. So this thing came in all kinds of different sizes and shapes and variations. And there was about 2,800 of these produced. Here is, to let you know, that's what a Colt Patterson looks like. Okay? Also, what I did not know is we all know the pistol, because they make repros of the pistol. But the name of the factory was called Patent Arms Company. It wasn't called Colt. It was called, that was the name of the company, his first factory. And what he manufactured also, which I don't know much about, is 1,450 revolving rifles and carbines, 462 revolving shotguns, and 2,350 revolving pistols between 1836 and 1842. Okay, and and it says here the most identifiable of the Patterson Colt pistols is the number 5 holster, or Texas Patterson, which 1,000 units were manufactured in 36 caliber. So now it goes on to say the operation and all this other fun stuff, but what happened was with Colt, there was some sort of a financial, well, let's get to where he sold these guns and where they were used. Okay, military acceptance. So these were military arms. All right, Colt sold to the United States Army some of these guns and saw limited use in the Seminole War in Florida. Okay, the firepower advantage was praised by the troops, but the United States government considered the arms to be excessively fragile and prone to malfunction. Now steps in the Republic of Texas, not to be confused with the state of Texas. The Republic of Texas, which was a separate country unto its own at one point in time, purchased 180 revolving shotguns and rifles and a like number of handguns for the Texas Navy in 1839. I did not know that the Republic of Texas had a Navy, but obviously they did. So, now, 1839 is when they had the Navy. Samuel Houston disbanded the Texas Navy in 1843. And then steps in Captain Jack Hayes, I think it was Jack Coffee Hayes, armed his company of Texas Rangers with surplus stocks of pistols. The repeating handguns became popular with the Ranger, providing them sustained firepower against their Comanche adversaries. This is before they started screwing with the Mexicans. They had to get rid of them first, the Comanches. The Patterson revolver was especially decisive in the Battle of Banderas Pass, where each Ranger had 10 shots to his disposal when armed with 2 pistols. So that's where you're a 2-gun shooter, okay? Because you ain't going to be reloading it. There ain't no reloading levers. So, Captain Jack Hayes and Samuel Walker, okay, of the Texas Rangers became major proponents of the Colt revolvers and were successful in advocating military contracts for later models such as the Walker Colt. Now, so they liked these Pattersons, but they didn't feel they were powerful enough. They liked the idea of revolvers. So Zachary Taylor, as a general in command of the border with Mexico, sent Captain Walker to New York in 1846 to meet with Colt and discuss improvements to the Patterson and make it more appropriate for use in battle. Walker at the time was serving in the U.S. Mounted Rifles and not the Rangers. Okay, so going back to Colt. This manufacturing company kind of failed. And Colt, after it failed, I forget when it was, but one of his partners took over and finished manufacturing the rest of the guns. Okay. A creditor and business associate. The factory, when the business failed. Okay. 1842, I believe the business failed. His creditor continued to manufacture sale of approximately 500 of the 2,850 pistols. So the business failed, Colt got out of it, his old man was pissed, he owed people money, things weren't looking good for him. So he did several other things. He developed waterproof coating for underground telegraph line or underwater telegraph lines. Okay, this was something that was the internet of the day. And also, if you look up about Sam Colt, it is interesting. He did all this weird stuff. He invented several other things. He invented an underwater mine that he was trying to sell to the government. So when these Texans, because they're not Americans, they're actually coming from the Republic of Texas, approached Colt in New York City, they sent Walker, okay? And let's see, let me brush up on this, and now I'll tell you how Walker and them come up with this thing. Okay, so Colt was traveling around, and how he actually made money before this deal with Walker. He had like this traveling medicine show. This is true. This is weird. And he was demonstrating nitrous oxide or laughing gas. And he traveled around the country in some weird thing and actually made money. So he had some money to start when Walker approached him then to start a company or start another company and build this pistol. So Walker goes up there and they said, look, we like the Patterson revolver, but it's too small and we need something more powerful. Okay, and it's true. Walker had two of these when he was killed. It says here he was killed in battle the same year his famous gun was invented in 1847. He had two of them on him. And all in all, they made 1,100 of these. That was it. That was all they made. 1,000 went to the military, and another 100 was for civilian sales. These guns are extremely rare, and it states here, now this is where the trivia questions come in, on October 9th, 2008, one specimen that has been handed down from a Mexican War veteran sold at auction in the for U.S. $920,000, as reported in America's First Freedom magazine, July 2018. Now, a Colt model 1847 Colt Walker pistol, the only known surviving example with its original case, sold by Rock Island Auction, or one of our favorite places, for a record price of $1.84 million. This makes this the most expensive single firearm ever sold at auction. Okay, so a lot of mystique. This thing's got a lot more behind it than anything else. So Walker goes up there, and him and Colt work together, and they say, look, we like the number 5, and we like the way it worked, helped us out in the Mexican-American Wars. His captain was in the United States Mounted Rifle for a large revolver to replace the single-shot model 1842 percussion pistols in use because they were single shot, even if you had two of them. A lot of the mounted troops or dragoons used them weird single shot 58 caliber or 45 caliber pistols. Some of them had shoulder stocks. That was what standard mounted troops used. And now also when they designed this gun, the gun was designed because when we compare it to the others, this thing is humongous. There's no way in hell you are carrying this on your person. Okay, it was designed to be carried in saddle-mounted holsters. That's why when you go in the old John Wayne movies and a lot of the old westerns, they would call these, I know Ian with that Forgotten Weapons calls them big iron. They were called horse pistols. And the reason they were called horse pistols is because you didn't carry it on you. You strapped it to the horse's saddle and the horse carried the gun until you needed to use it, not you. Okay? That's why they were called horse pistols. You needed a horse to wander around. You know, the horse had to carry it for you. And there's tales about the weapon shooting out to 100 yards. And another strange thing, these sights are regulated to 100 yards. The other guys do mention it there, but that's a very bizarre thing. 100, you know, that's sighted in. Now, specifications on it. It says here it holds 60 grains of powder, which we'll get into that more later, but that is what people loaded in them. But a lot of these guns, about 300 of them failed out of that 1,000 that were in U.S. military use and had to be rebuilt back at the factory. The pistol weighs 4.5 pounds, unloaded, okay? Has a 9-inch barrel, fires a standard 44 caliber ball, or we'll look into the bullets also later. And, okay, and this is where Colt had the engraving put on the cylinders. And what he did to protect his patents, and that was a big thing with him, is he went and had an engraver make a cylinder and they rolled this on there because it was extremely expensive and difficult to do, to know you were getting an original Colt and not a copy of it. That's why the engraving. And that's something I did not know until recently. Okay? So problems. What were the problems? In addition to its large size and weight, ruptured cylinders, and the load and catch. We'll go over that more when we look at the gun. Alright, so now the legacy. The Dragoon, right, he had to make another one because that was the problem. They were too heavy, they only made 1,100, and that's where he come up with the Dragoons, and there are 3 variations, which is basically a scaled down Walker. Shorter barrel, 7.5 inches, shorter cylinder. No more loading 60 grains of powder in there, okay? And it was the evolution in design. The improvements included 7.5-inch barrel, shorter cylinders, typically loaded with only 50 grains of powder instead of 60, thereby reducing the occurrence of ruptured cylinders. And that's where Colt started putting a little latch on the loading level instead of this. We'll look at that when we look at the gun. And that was an improvement there. And that came with the guns after this. Alright. Now it says the power. Colt Walker is quite powerful. Modern replicas firing black powder produce energy levels in excess of 500 foot-pounds. Okay. And it's like I said, it's the most powerfully the largest and most powerful manufactured handgun from 1847 until the introduction of the .357 Magnum in 1935. And there's some kind of replicas are chambered in a .45 black powder Magnum Wildcat cartridge that is offered by the Colt Black Powder Shop, Cimarron. Okay. It shows where they were used in movies and got the genre and everything. But that's about it. Yeah, I got kind of stuck there. I had to edit out a few things, but I got a picture of Walker himself. Actual photograph of him. Handsome devil, eh? So, this gun, even though I've heard about it and I've known something about it, the Colt Walker holds its own place in history, mystique, and it gives you a list of movies that this was used in. You know, Clint Eastwood with John Wayne, like I said, that's where he called it a horse pistol, and all this other stuff. So, a lot of fun facts about it, and that's kind of why I wanted to add one of these to my collection since I got back into the black powder. And they had a bunch of them come in from Italy here recently. And I believe this is an Uberti pistol, but it is marketed by Cimarron. So that is my story and history and trivia on the Colt Walker replica, or the Colt Walker pistol. Replicas are pretty close. So now in the next video, we'll actually look at the gun, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, a lot of guys show you this pistol, but they never really compare it to something like the 1860. And we're going to do a side-by-side comparison just to show you how big and unusual this gun is.